I'm gonna give you one of the best ways to understand athlete development, and we're gonna start right now. What's up, everybody? It's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com, and if this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in becoming an athletic freak, you wanna be more explosive, you wanna get stronger, you wanna dominate on the field, make sure you like, you subscribe, and you ring that notification bell so we can help you become a champion. So oftentimes at Garage Strength, we get asked the question of how have we been so fortunate to be successful with multiple world championship caliber athletes in 3 different sports? How have we developed athletes in freestyle wrestling, in Olympic weightlifting, in track and field, in the sport of football, all these different athletic realms? We've had champions at every single level. And people ask this question, how have we been able to do this? And a lot of this comes back to my original background, which was training with Dr. Anatoly Bondarchuk. I was able to pick his brain. He was an Olympic champion, and he helped me learn a couple key factors behind becoming an elite level coach. And one of those things I learned from him was how to categorize your athletes, or how to put your athletes into buckets per se. And that's something that I then have been able to develop over time to recognize and understand and label my athletes so that I can memorize and remember specific situations with specific athlete types to make my coaching a little bit more progressive from a long-term perspective, so that I can remember various instances, label them, create analogies, and work forward with various athletes to make the problem-solving issues a little bit simpler. So this athlete typing concept has been a huge progressive mindset, mind change for us here at Garage Strength, is that we've been able to take down and recognize that there's 3 types of athletes. So out of those 3 types of athletes, if we can think about that athlete 1, at the Garage Strength system, we refer to this as the athlete that is Zen. So if we can think about that Zen athlete, they're the individual that is much more laid back. They're much calmer in training. It's not an emotional roller coaster. They're level-headed, they're even keel. They approach training from a logical perspective, and every single day when they come to the training site, they're completely focused on the task at hand. They're not distracted. They're not bringing in their emotional baggage. Instead, they're coming in to train. They're coming in to achieve their goals. They're coming in to work towards that long-term purpose as an athlete, and they want to get their work done. They don't get distracted, and they're able to continue to strive and thrive over a long period of time. The important part here is that Zen athletes don't really respond to emotional style training. They don't really respond to hoorah football type style training that we might see here in the American football system, but instead they respond very well to logical decision making from logical instruction, and that approach is then transferred into their training, and they can continue to make long-term progress. That second athlete inside the parabolic periodization model is the fragile athlete. So type 2 refers to athletes that tend to be a little bit more fragile. Now, this might have a negative connotation, but we've got to recognize that it doesn't mean we're judging these athletes as negative or positive. It means that this is just part of their personality. They're the athletes that come in and one day they might hit this massive PR. They go off the charts. They hit huge numbers that the coach was not expecting at all. Even if they're in another sport, they might blow up randomly, and then all of a sudden the next day or 2 or the next week, they're in a very big lull. They're struggling to come out. All of a sudden, all of the life stressors that they have in their life start to fade into, they start to seep into their everyday training system. And that's what we see with fragile athletes. Fragile athletes tend to struggle quite a bit with handling life stress versus handling athletic stress. They struggle to separate the two. They're the ones that want to come in and tell coaches and tell their training partners every little thing that could have possibly went wrong on that given day went wrong. And if they're in a very good positive state, they'll tell you every little thing that went well for that day. They're very vocal. They're very up and down types of individuals. So as coaches, it's important to recognize in the parabolic periodization system, in our system here, is to recognize how to handle fragile athletes. It's important, just like handling Zen athletes, when we're dealing with fragile athletes, it's important to not raise your voice. They get offended very easily. They struggle with criticism. They need their backs rubbed a little bit more. They're that type of athlete. And that's completely okay. And that also means that when you're prepping for a competition or you're going into a big meet, a big game, whatever it might be, the fragile athletes need much more stress to be alleviated from their life. They need every little thing to be taken care of so that they have as minimal amount of stress heading into that competition and they can perform as well as possible. Now, that third athlete in the parabolic periodization system is the meathead athlete. And so that meathead athlete is the individual that's always high wired. They're always bringing the energy. They're always bringing the excitement into training. In the sport of Olympic weightlifting, they're the dudes that want to go ham every single day. They're the ones slamming bars. They're going off. They're going nuts. They want to go as hard as possible every single day. And these are typically the most popular athletes. They're the most consistent athletes that we encounter in various different sports. So as a coach, we've got to recognize early on who those meatheads are. We've got to try to provide various stimulus to try and lower their aggressive nature in certain days, because even on days when they're banged up, they're sore, they're fatigued, they're gonna go as hard as possible. And they might not get the best results. They're the ones that care more about the weight on the bar. They're the ones that care more about the distance that they're throwing, whatever it might be. They don't necessarily care as much about technical process and technical progress. So we've got to make sure as coaches that we handle meathead athletes as well as we possibly can, because they can be difficult at times, but they're also the ones that can really develop a huge culture, a positive environment, and they're really exciting to be around. You've just got to control them as well as you possibly can. And the key factor behind all three of these types is to recognize how they respond to different types of strength stimuli, how they respond to different types of pulling stimuli, how do they respond to variations, how do they respond to full lifts. If you're in other sports like football, wrestling, track and field, try to find a measurement. You can start to understand how they respond to various stimuli as well, and how they handle that stimulus and then apply it to that specific field of sports performance. So it's important to try to put these athletes into buckets. You can try to analyze, label them, create analogies for them so it's easier for you to remember as you get more and more athletes as a coach. And then over time, you can start to learn the habits and the consistencies, and then you can continue to develop your system around these specific types of athletes. And this is something that we use inside our parabolic periodization programming, which is available at garagestrength.com. If you want to learn more about parabolic periodization, you can pick up our parabolic periodization course and book. If you want more information about athletes and Olympic weightlifting, you can click on this video. Until next time, guys, peace.